Let's get her done. Mm. Say hi back. Okay. But you will at some point. Yeah, you'll do the right thing.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
Welcome back, Wolfpack, for a special stream of Dire Wolf Media. We're going to be doing the live stream of the Dire State of the Union, and I really mean it is a dire state of the union. I mean, our union is in a bit of trouble. And we'll be getting the speech mumbled to us incoherently by our Commander-in-Chief.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we'll understand some of the words.
Do you think Xi Jinping's going to give a State of the Union too? I mean, he just flew over the whole thing, so I mean, I would say he probably has a pretty good idea for the State of the Union.
I'm sure he is doing his State of the Union at the same time as our State of the Union because it makes sense for those the puppet and the master to be in sync with each other. He probably also doesn't need to watch our State of the Union because he probably wrote it.
No, ours was written by Big Khan. Remember?
Big Khan, whom we are.
Yeah, unlike Crowder, we weren't above taking. Crowder thought it was tens of millions, hundreds of millions. My bank had to update their computer system because it was just too many zeros.
They didn't have room on their interface for that high a number.
Yeah. So, if you guys are looking for, somebody who's got moral, upstanding citizen, Steven Crowder's your guy. If you're looking for money grubbing, greedy,
clearly we're in
will
it
say
for the money.
anything for $1.
That's why
literally,
we are so rich.
Give us $1.
We also have several stories we're going to be talking about leading up to the stream. So I'm sure you're monitoring right now for when they go live with the.
I am. You would think I was, but I am. I'm not.
Okay. Well, it doesn't start for.
I'm really glad I'm not sharing my screen right now because I accidentally just opened up my resume that had like very thorough docs.
Wow, like if you're gonna dox yourself, that's the way.
Yeah,
to do
just
it.
like if you guys had ever had any questions about me or who I am, what I do, what my background is,
wow, his blood type.
You would have,
Wow. No, that's start for another 40 minutes or so. So we got some stories we can cover. I am up late or early, depending on your perspective, to do this stream. So I'm a bit out of it. I am drinking some British coffee. Inferior coffee,
just like watery, like dirt water, like
no, it's tea.
Oh, so you put like a tree branch in there.
I think the biggest story right now is the Chinese spy balloon story, and I'm wondering, you might think that we found out this story from the media because it's in the news, right? It's been the biggest thing in the news for the last week. You might get the impression that we found out about it through the news. But Fox, do you remember how we found out about the story?
We found out about it by being American citizens, and somehow, some way, we took our eyes off of our phones for enough time to look up into the sky, and we happened to see a second moon. It was rather large. It was rather visible. So we just happened to notice it by looking into the air and right. Seeing it, much the same way that we all happen to be noticing the price of eggs and our gas bills.
Right. So it was brought up by average day citizens who were taking videos of it and saying, "Hey, there's this big balloon, and it looks like it has some sort of comm package on it. What is this?" And the U.S. military, the federal government, was absolutely aware of this very slow-moving spy balloon flying over like our country. It flew through Alaska, then through Canada, then to Montana, and then
it basically took a diagonal, like the longest possible diagonal through the whole continent
while changing directions and navigating to make sure it hit certain military bases and nuclear silos.
Yeah, we have a few details from this ABC story, which I'm gonna share my screen to you, Dyer. Because I'm a nice guy.
Like that.
Yeah, I want to show you my resume.
Thanks.
So they got some stats in here about the balloon. So the balloon was obviously big, but I didn't realize it was like this
Three
big.
buses?
It was like it was big. It was like like on the Venn diagram of things that were big in this balloon, it's just a circle
overlapping.
It was a circle the size of that balloon. So let's hear. So the Navy released some pictures today, which we'll look through this in a bit. But let me get down here to the stats here. So despite they depict what appears to be an evening nighttime efforts to retrieve the large balloon that the Pentagon said was about 200 feet tall. It's pretty big. Divers were working to retrieve other parts of the balloon's payload assembly, estimated to be the size of 3 buses, possibly school buses. But Kamala Harris is more the expert on that. And they sunk to the bottom of the 45 feet of water. I'll add to that seawater, because we couldn't have shot it down over, I don't know, all
the
of
barren wasteland of Alaska and also Montana and all the other places that weren't
Yeah,
populated.
the other, 30... This balloon visited more states than Hillary did in 2016. Like, my God.
It's been across both borders.
Although, similar to Hillary, it did not end up visiting Wisconsin. I don't know. Wisconsin, that's your guys' problem. I mean, maybe you guys were more more interesting. I do like the cheese, but just be more interesting. More people will visit you. All right.
Yeah.
So, let's see here. Officials have said that the debris field is approximately the size of 15 football fields by 15 football fields. Now, I was under the impression that a football field was already a two-dimensional unit of measure. I didn't realize that it was also a one-dimensional. So, like, it's already in square units. So, is this quadric, like a cube?
No, I can't. It's not cubic.
It's I'm pretty good at math, but I'm not this good at math. So I believe a football field. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dyer. I know you love sports just as much as I do. I believe a football field is 300 feet or 100 yards. So that would make this pretty big. It'd be about 4,500 feet. Yes, 4,500 feet square. That's pretty big. That's like almost a square mile. I mean, that's pretty close to a square mile. So. Why didn't they just say square mile? Okay, who is this? Who wrote this and is trying to like flex that they like watch sports ball? Because I don't believe them. Oh, it's Libby Carthy and yeah, those
it was better to use miles or nautical miles as we're at sea. I don't get the whole football fields.
I think it's pretty close to a square kilometer actually, because it's a little bit less than a square mile. So I don't know. Anyways. It's as big as like the hole in the economy is right now. So
I feel like when people say things are compared to football fields, it's because they're assuming people are stupid and only have a reference for sports.
And I am stupid and do not have a reference for sports. So
I don't think that makes you stupid. You'd have to understand large spaces. You need to frame it as in football fields.
So so we had the spy balloon. It was seen by your average American citizen happening to look up. I would guess that the powers that be were not expecting us to look up. However, we did. You know what's funny is the left, didn't they come out with a movie a few years ago that was like "Don't Look Up" and it was supposed to be like a parody on
hilarious.
Like the right, and it's literally like
the left.
The left's policy right now is like please don't look up at the balloon and equate that to Biden's policy acumen.
So it's very clear that they had no intention of eliminating this threat. And I want to point out that a spy balloon over our country, for any portion of our country, is a threat. They are trying to gather military intelligence on us that might not cause death and destruction today, but could cause death and destruction down the road. And also that payload may have been, they don't know, it could have been more than just an intelligence gathering apparatus. It could have with that size of 3 school buses. Well, it could have easily had a small nuclear device or
it could have had a large nuclear device. So like one of the other measurements that I saw, other things that are also the size of 3 school buses was a Boeing 747. It was approximately the size of the fuselage of that, and I believe the Enola Gay that dropped the atomic bomb was a lot goddamn smaller than a 747. Because I've seen it at the National Air and Space Museum, as many of you probably have.
The amount of lift produced by a balloon versus produced by the airfoils on a plane, different. But I get your point. It could have been a large device.
Still. Well, no, it's not about like it was just like it could have been a large nuclear device. Like it didn't have to be a small nuclear device. It could have been a big one. So.
What I'm saying is that even if they felt confident that they knew, because they have intelligence on these balloons, that these spy balloons are constructed a certain way and they were only going to be able to collect information, even if they believed all that, they have no way to guarantee what they think is the package is what was there, and that could easily have hidden a small to large threat beyond just the intelligence gathering capabilities, which is bad enough as it is. Like they could be collecting cell information, collecting, obviously close pictures of military sites.
If you don't mind, I can talk a little bit about that so that we can make sure that everything you're saying is publicly sourceable. So the DoD a few years ago did do a lot of experiments with balloons similar in nature to this one. A lot of the left and the media and kind of your just I I don't know, your very average NPC observer of the balloon was like, oh, well, balloons are old technology. That's probably why they used it, is because, China, they're not as good as us. So that's not actually true. So the DoD did a lot of experiments with balloons, ways of getting them to navigate using air currents and raising and lowering it in the air column, which it appears this Chinese balloon was able to do. And they actually found that these were rather useful in the battlefield. Two really big reasons is these are hovering at an altitude about half as high as what a spy satellite is, and sometimes as low as just a quarter of the way up to what a spy satellite is. What that means is you've got hundreds of miles of air that's not between you and the camera, or not between your camera and what you're trying to look at. And what the DoD was able to find during these research projects is they were able to get much higher resolution photos and videos, not to mention they were able to communicate with it a little bit easier because it wasn't as far up in orbit. Your time to get to send a signal to orbit and back is you got a lag time of several seconds. 2 seconds is probably a long time, up to a second depending on what the altitude is. Now, if you are bouncing that satellite signal off of other satellites to get it over the horizon, you could be looking at a much longer period of time, in the order of several seconds. There's even an issue with drones when you're flying them when you're piloting them from far away from where you're at. You tend to have to shoot ahead of where your target is, because you know that there's going to be lag. You guys ever play Call of Duty and you get a low ping? Well, this is even lower ping. But the balloons being much closer to the ground solve that issue quite a bit. And so in addition to having quicker response time and much higher quality photos, they also can loiter for a very, very long time.
No cost of fuel.
Yes, no cost of fuel. So we employed quite regularly spy planes that were high altitude, either high or fast or both. But those have a very limited window in which they can actually be over the target observing it. You can't just loiter over top of say a military base for 3 or 4 days and get a sense of who's coming, who's going, what's the patterns of movement, which buildings are probably the mess halls, which buildings seem to be the arms buildings, which buildings seem to be suspiciously something else other than what they look like on first glance, just based off the movement patterns of certain personnel. And when you're that much closer, your optics can probably resolve facial features.
How many of our planes are actually serviceable?
Well, there's that. So there's a lot of reasons why you can't do that kind of loitering and long-term intel gathering with a plane, because you're either too far away or you're over it too fast. But with the balloon, it solves a lot of that problem, especially the fuel issue. So the idea that this balloon was no big deal that was a bunch of malarkey.
Yes. It should have been shot down when it first came across our border in Alaska. And we definitely have robust systems for detecting threats like this. There's zero chance they did not know about this balloon. There's also zero chance that it transited the U.S. in the way it did accidentally. Now, the Biden administration would have let it go and done and said nothing about the balloon, allowing it to collect intelligence on the American people and the U.S. military, if not for average Americans bringing up the balloon and making and it getting spread across social media and then picked up by certain news outlets that made it an issue they couldn't ignore. They were being mocked and people were commenting on how feckless they were and how they should be shooting it down. Politicians are saying, hey, we should be shooting this thing down. Why are we allowing this to be over our country? It was embarrassing Biden. So they only ended up shooting it down over the ocean after it already passed over America, when it no longer was producing more of a threat than it already had. And their excuse for why they weren't shooting it down was that if they were to shoot it up, those things generally fly between 80 to 120,000 feet. So if you blow something up at that altitude, it would create a debris field that is pretty wide. And if you have a population below that area, then yeah, you run the risk of it falling on somebody's property or person. But that is a ridiculous excuse because there was plenty of times where it was over the barren wasteland of Alaska, or over the ocean on its way to Alaska, or in Canada where no one actually lives. No, on the barren border between Canada and the U.S., there was plenty of opportunities where we could have shot it down. There was opportunities to shoot it down and keep it mostly intact and not damaged so we could gain intelligence on them. But they chose to let it pose the maximum possible threat to America and then blow it up over the ocean, over seawater, where it would be the least likely for us to get intelligence out of it. They did the worst of both worlds, right? So they were very embarrassed by this story, and they had F-22 shoot it with an air-to-air missile.
The rumor was, I think you might be able to confirm this. That was the F-22's first.
First air-to-air kill.
First air-to-air kill of the entire model line ever.
Yes, a plane that was designed to be the premier air-to-air platform.
Yeah.
What?
The dogfighter, right? I mean, it's
it is the best plane at killing other planes. They have teams skilled pilots who train day in and day out at doing basic fighter maneuvers or dogfighting, and they win every single scenario against our other planes and our planes that are flying intentionally to duplicate our adversaries' capabilities. And so they're very good at that. But they've always been fighting in theory, fighting simulations. And the first time they had an air combat was shooting a fucking unmanned balloon.
Yeah. So there was some discrepancy as to who said what when. First the story was, well, Biden didn't want to endanger American citizens. He told them to wait because that debris field you were talking about, that could injure people. And then when we all said, hey, that's kind of bunk. Well, then the story changed. I ordered. Biden says, I ordered them on Wednesday to shoot it down. And they told me that they couldn't do it. Which really brings into the question of, one, is it that they couldn't do it, or is it that they wouldn't do it? There was some speculation that there was a lot of concern that the military wasn't confident that they would be able to hit a balloon, which is a little scary.
I told you they could.
Well, maybe they could after a while. But that brings into another question as to, is Joe Biden the commander in chief? So it was said that Mark Milley, who is not in the military chain of command. He is a military advisor. He's not in the chain of command, even though he illegally attempted to insert himself into the chain of command. He apparently advised Joe that this wasn't a good idea for collateral reasons. And the job of the commander-in-chief is to surround him with advisors that will tell him the consequences of his actions. And then it is his duty to take responsibility for those consequences and act. Inaction is not an option. Joe should have said, there is going to be collateral. There could be collateral. We need to figure out a good time and place to do this to minimize collateral. This was at a point when it was over, I think, like past Missouri. Like it was like in the center of the dead center of the country, basically. They had plenty of time to shoot it down in an area that was not populated. And Joe is just like, oh, well, they told me that, it wasn't a good idea. So, I just didn't do it.
Another part of that is that he's saying that he ordered them on Wednesday. Well, it had already been in the country for a long time by Wednesday. So is he saying he only found out about
Nazi
it
fags.
to then
How dare you?
Jews in
Why would you do that?
I wonder if the reason the Biden admin didn't shoot it down was because Blinken had some kind of meeting with Chinese officials, and they did not want to attack a Chinese aircraft right before the meeting. So they just hoped nobody would notice it.
I believe that is the official assumption at this point is that Blinken had a visit to China planned. He has since canceled it, and it seemed very much so that was a large contributing factor to not shooting it down.
But they knew about it flying over the U.S. for days before Wednesday. So why was his order on Wednesday to shoot it down? Why was it not earlier? So and then you're right. I feel like it implies that Biden was not informed because he's not in charge. Or the DOD is the Department of Defense is incompetent and really didn't detect it, even though that's like their job.
Can we go over the other big lie about the we were jamming it the whole time, and they're still sticking with that. So
they definitely claimed they were jamming the ability for the balloon from the beginning. They claimed they were jamming the ability to send any information.
Dyer's not going to countermand any official positions.
I just told you what they said.
Yes, I will. However, so the idea that they were jamming it is complete BS. So this is something that was operating 50 to 100,000 feet in the air. The idea that we have some kind of jamming system that could, from the ground, I'll go through a few different scenarios. So let's say we have a jamming system from the ground. Very difficult to make radio jamming directional. So you have to have something that creates a bubble of radio static that goes up to 100,000 feet. You think that might disrupt some stuff on the ground? Do you think that might be a little difficult to maintain as it traverses the entire continental United States? That you're going to be able to keep it 100% jammed at all times from the ground. Now let's look at it from an air perspective. Well, maybe you flew a plane up there and you jammed it. We don't have something that can loiter for days next to it. So you're talking about expending, several plane missions. Probably you have to swap them out every hour or so. You're talking about operating at an altitude that's really close to the ceiling of a lot of our planes that can do that sort of stuff. So the idea that we were jamming it from the air, I don't think that was claimed. I don't think it was possible to jam something from the air for that long a time. Usually
you would know because you see the platform flying.
You would have seen it flying around. Jamming's not a thing that's a permanent thing. Jamming is instantaneous. You're trying to get your enemy to trip up in the moment and get them in chaos in the moment so you can do an attack. Jamming is like a flashbang. It's not something that's persistent or effective in a persistent way. That's not typically how it's used tactically.
And usually you jam the receiver,
usually you jam the receiver. So let's talk about the receiver. Where would the receiver be? Oh, well, are we even assuming that it's using radio communication? So there's been a lot of very successful experiments with surface to orbit laser communication with satellites. Some of the issue with that is that the atmosphere causes lasers to wobble a little bit. So we can do it. It's not something that's wide use because it's a little bit difficult to achieve when you're going all the way from ground level all the way up to orbit. But if you're halfway to orbit already, it's something that I'm not saying I didn't even see any stories. I'm just speculating here because it's so easy to speculate around the supposed narrative that they gave us. We can't, if that balloon was using some kind of laser communication with a Chinese satellite, well, we can't jam light waves. So that's out the window. Like I said, also, jamming is not something that's capable of being persisted if something's moving or
it has maximum range.
Yeah. So when you've got a surveillance package that is likely to encounter jamming, what you're going to do is, as it's collecting information, you're going to buffer it, and as soon as you get clear air, as soon as that jamming slips for even a microsecond, you're going to do a really highly condensed, highly compressed burst of radio communication, and you're going to get your download. And maybe you only need one of those windows every couple of hours, and you can download gigabytes of data. But I don't think that they would have even needed that much. Another thing that you could do that I could imagine very easily stuffing into a platform the size of 3 buses. My God, here's how I would build it: is if I was going to put a balloon over an adversary, I would anticipate jamming. So here's what I would do: is you'll collect some data for a while, and then I would download it to a rocket drone. And then that rocket drone would fire off the side of this giant platform, fire it over the horizon, and way faster than our jamming, whatever the hell we're using to jam it, can keep up with it. All of a sudden it gets over the horizon, and now that rocket, that drone, can then download whatever it is to Chinese HQ, and then it just drop itself in the ocean after it wipes itself. There's a million ways that you could get data out of that thing. So the idea that, oh, this was safe, this didn't really matter, we were jamming it, there was no problem. What was really golden was hearing Pete Buttigieg why was Pete Buttigieg talking about this? It was ridiculous. Pete Buttigieg was talking about it on the Sunday shows about how it didn't pose any threat to Americans, and then in his next sentence talked about how the balloon disrupted air travel, and there were some flights that had to be grounded and some airspace that had to be secured, and so it disrupted flights over the weekend. That's a pretty big fucking deal. That's a really big fucking deal. We just had a total cessation of air travel for 2 hours a couple of weeks ago. We will probably take all year to recover from that. And then we just had the southeastern region of the United States locked down again because of this balloon. And you're telling me that there was no harm to the American people? I just don't buy that. So the jamming narrative's bunk. The no danger to America is bunk. The all of the whole story, it's all bunk, Dyer. It's just bunk all the way down.
They could have just transmitted it down, like, while we're focusing on trying to jam the satellites way beyond their jamming capability, distance away. They could have just transmitted it down. They had a agent on the ground waiting in the path just to receive a burst signal as it passed over.
Do you know how the earliest spy satellites worked?
How?
So this was really early. This was before digital photography, when we had our very, very first satellites. And we would send them up in the air on rockets, and half of them would explode, because that's what space rockets did back then. And they would get up there, and they would take pictures with a giant film camera. Well, how do you get that film down? There's no digital. There's no digital imagery. There's no way to download it. So what it would do is it would do what I just talked about, where you put the you put the film. It put the film into a capsule, and that capsule, when the satellite passed over the continental United States, it would drop the capsule to Earth. And so it would fall, and then we would go find the capsule, get the film out of it, develop the film, and then there was our spy photos. And so you can imagine a slightly digitized version of that is what I just described with the drone rockets. But that's how we used to get it. And so you could even imagine the exact same analog system with this, what Dyer just said, with a Chinese agent on the ground. I suppose that they would have to take a break from Swalwell. Yeah, it could have just dropped a small drive, maybe even something that's the size of a thumb drive. Given approximate GPS coordinates, you get close to it, you got your special Chinese decoder ring, and it starts beeping because it's got a homing device on it as well. And you go get it, and then you just take it back home, plug it in your computer, and upload it on 4chan or something like that, and the Chinese military can get to it.
The point is that
100 ways.
The balloon was a risk. There is no way they could with certainty say that they were jamming it, and it was highly unlikely that they were able to jam it the way they're saying, where they were able to prevent any information from leaving. There's a lot of ways that there's no jamming could have prevented certain ways of passing the information, and so the Biden administration was embarrassed. They were not going to act. They only act because they were embarrassed and pressured to act. And they allowed a very high risk of injury to the American people, and have put it at risk for things in the future. I want to keep in mind, this is in the context of China and America are both expecting to be at war in 2 years. We had a U.S. Air Force general say that we are preparing. We're under the assumption that we will be at war with China in 2 years. China's actions with the build up of their military and their military maneuvers show that they plan to be at least at war with Taiwan, but also possibly at war with America in short term. So it is our military adversary who plans to be at war with us, trying to get active military intelligence on our military capabilities. This is no small thing.
I hate to interrupt you here, but Kamala Harris is addressing the chamber, which I believe is
the senator from West Virginia,
not
Ms.
5-year-old, right?
Huh?
The senator from Iowa, Miss Ernst.
I don't know what they're doing, but
The senator from Montana.
I think
Mr.
it's usually not. I don't believe that this is a time for Kamala to be talking. I know that she's the president of the Senate.
It's never a good time for her to talk.
The committee will exit the chamber through the lobby doors.
Okay, I think that they are just doing kind of a. Okay, maybe this is not as big of a deal. Okay, so what the State of the Union is, like, in a technical sense, is a joint meeting of the House and the Senate. And so I believe to initiate that joint session, you're probably going to have the president of the Senate, who's the vice president, who's Kamala Harris, and then also the Speaker of the House, McCarthy. I believe that they are just calling to order and formally starting that joint session. So I thought maybe there was something unprecedented with Kamala gabbing. And I believe Dyer is correct that it's always a bad time for her in particular to start. But as for her ceremonial position as vice president, I don't think this is necessarily out of order. However, we will stand by.
Getting back to the embarrassment, right? So after it was shot down, the Biden admin revealed that apparently they found during the Biden administration that there had been 5 total balloons, Chinese spy balloons.
Do you mean the Biden or the Trump administration?
The Biden administration is who are the ones who are speaking now, right? So that they're saying that there was 5 other balloons that passed near or over the U.S. during the Trump admin. And 3 of them were over land. 1 was over Texas, a portion of Texas, and 2 were over a portion of Florida. And they're saying
1
that
if by land, 2 if by sea.
That these 5 passed happened during the Trump admin, trying to deflect off of their clear, obvious failure, trying to say, well, Trump failed too.
If I can interject here, I know where you're about to go with this, and I'll let you finish in a second, but those are big accusations. So Biden just, they were just, they're not very tactful. So they were just trying to throw anything out there. Well, Trump did it too, so it's not a big deal. As if to say that, well, because Trump made a decision not to shoot it down, that Biden is correct for having made the same decision. That doesn't really fly. Not like that balloon. But what Biden did there by accident is actually levy some pretty major accusations towards members of the Trump administration. You had the head of NORAD, who's in charge of keeping track of flying objects and identifying them when they're in our airspace. And the idea that NORAD commander was not able to detect a large 200-foot balloon in his airspace during his command, that was a pretty heavy accusation to heap against him. The idea that the DoD was allowing incursions on a regular basis.
It's not just the head of the organization, by the way, because there's a incalculable number. It's actually is calculable, but a large number of people who are on the lower rung who are actively involved in the daily task of searching for possible threats in our airspace.
Yeah, and
that
you guys
would
are all
have
just
known
trash at your job, apparently,
and would have to have been so inept at their job that they missed this, or so corrupt that they did not report it.
Correct. So what happened after those accusations were made by unnamed DoD officials, Dyer?
A bunch of named Trump officials, heads of organizations like Mike Pompeo and
head of NORAD.
The head of NORAD, the Trump Secretary of Defense, all came out and said emphatically, no, there was no spy balloons during the Trump era. We were not informed or have any knowledge of any spy balloons during that period. And these are statements for which if they are saying them falsely, they could be held responsible for.
Well, I believe that the update later this afternoon was that those are indeed now confirmed to have been false statements. I think that the sourcing on that's a little sparse right now, but that was my understanding. Is that the most recent understanding is that those were false statements that were made intentionally, and that it's just there was no there to begin with, and
there's no balloons.
It may now be a crime.
The accusation itself was a crime, right?
I think lying with color of authority is probably.
So that might be whether an unnamed Biden defense official.
Well, we should name him and give him a number.
Yeah. So not only that, but we have like Pompeo saying that he has talked with the people lower down in the organization, and they also have no information of these balloons. It is simply a false story. But you have two options here. Either the Biden administration is lying, which is most likely is because trying to deflect, or second, if you want to believe them, then the story would necessitate that the members of the DOD, chose not to tell the president and his entire cabinet and all the top officials about 5 very real threats to U.S. Security.
Yeah.
And those individuals would need to be in jail.
Well, you see, Dyer, I mean, really, they're just trying to come up with a good reason for how they protected us. If Trump was at the helm, he would have, just fired from the hip there. And, he could have risked going to World War III with China.
If Trump
and
was in charge, they would not have done it in the first place.
That is true. That if there's anything the Biden administration is trying to avoid, it's World War III. That's why they have been destabilizing Eastern Europe to the extent that is possible. They've been dumping millions, billions of dollars, billions of actual hardware, dollars of hardware into Ukraine.
Doing exactly what they said would cause World War III, by the way.
Doing exactly what they said would cause World War III. So if there's any administration in history that's ever been cautious about starting World War III, it's definitely the Joe Biden administration. And so that's why, as much as you're a warmonger, Dyer, you wanted him to shoot down that balloon and start World War III. Joe just wasn't willing to do it. He's here to protect you.
I think that showing strength and shooting down an unmanned spy balloon before it can pose a threat to your country showing that strength is how you avoid a war.
Yeah, and speaking of that strength, this will once again be an idea that I've had for a long time about how America should be conducting itself in its foreign policy and how we should have conducted ourselves after World War II. Is that America is, we're essentially a country from the future. We're a civilization from the future as compared to most other countries. And only because of Democrats has China been able to catch up. It's interesting that you have the last several Democrat administrations, we seem to have lost control of a lot of classified intelligence and know-how. Under Clinton, you had the selling of our space rocket technology to China and to North Korea. Under the Obama administration, you had, they're hard to count, but the Hillary emails and the slaughtering of all of our human intel assets on the ground in China comes to mind. And under the Biden administration, you have this balloon thing. It seems to be that China grows dramatically and acquires a dramatic amount of intelligence on how to do stuff. Not just where is our stuff at, but how does our technology work? How does our most classified technology, how does it work? They seem to grow leaps and bounds in their capacity every time there's a Democrat in office. But what we should have done and what we could do now is say, we are not going to allow these less developed savage civilizations into our airspace. You can do whatever you want in your own borders, but if you try to send something up more than, let's say, 1,000 feet in the air, like a balloon, we're going to shoot it down. We're going to vaporize it. You try to cause problems outside your borders, we're going to vaporize it. You're going to try to send something over the ocean and float it over the entire continental United States, not a chance, because we're going to fucking vaporize it. And I think that we need to be taking a little bit more of a, not just an America first, but America first, and that's it. Nobody else. No other considerations. America's first, America best, and act like it. And like you said, Dyer, this wouldn't have happened under a Trump administration because there was a lot of things. A lot of things didn't happen under a Trump administration. North Korea was very calm and quiet under a Trump administration. Putin was very calm and quiet under a Trump administration. You had Mexico was suddenly enforcing their borders and not allowing floods and floods. I mean, there was a steady trickle to be sure, but not like what we've had. And so, yeah, you under a Trump administration, under an America First and an American dominance policy, America First domestically and American dominance abroad. That was kind of the Trump doctrine. And, I think that there is definitely value to that. Because the speak softly, carry a big stick, or, speak bombastically, carry a big stick. What matters is you've got the big stick and people have seen you use it. Joe Biden's big stick is a walking stick.
I think one of the biggest pieces of intelligence here, like the Chinese got a whole bunch of intelligence. They could have, dragnetted cell phone calls. They could have taken very highly detailed pictures and video of our military bases and their daily operations. But they also got one key piece of information. That is, how afraid is the American government of China, and will they act if threatened? And
the answer was no.
And the Biden admin told China, showed their cards that they are too afraid to actually do anything if China takes military action against Taiwan. That's the biggest piece of information they got, biggest piece of intel.
All right, so we got it is 9:01 Eastern Standard Time right now. The scheduled start time for the State of the Union was 9 p.m. sharp. Now, as late as Joe Biden tends to be to his speeches, this is not necessarily abnormal. Presidents are usually a healthy 15 minutes within the first 15 minutes of whenever they're scheduled to speak for the State of the Union. There will, of course, be all of the ceremony and the Mr. President and all of that, jazz from the Sergeant at Arms as he introduces people walking in. So before we, I know we had some other stuff we want to talk about. Do you have anything else you want to say about the balloon? We're going to talk about some of our predictions.
No, we're good. Move on to some of the other cultural stories.
All right. So, well, I think we're getting pretty close to this State of the Union, so we'll go through a few of the things we're going to predict about that. I can circle back to these cultural moments here afterwards. Maybe if you're still awake. So some of my predictions for what Biden will talk about. I believe that he will reference January 6th. His method of referencing it will be obtuse and unnecessary, as referencing January 6th always is. Apparently, Paul Pelosi, who might be him on the screen actually, standing next to Nancy there. Paul Pelosi was apparently invited as a guest of Joe Biden, so I believe he probably could have come anyways. I don't know. I believe that he'll use Paul Pelosi, referencing him in some way to reference the attack on Paul Pelosi that was carried out by a leftist pedophile drug addict, and they will try to link that to Trump supporters. Biden will definitely talk about police killing black people, and he will not talk about the race of the officers who killed those black people. Ukraine. There'll be a lot of talk about Ukraine. Do you remember the State of the Union last year, Dyer, when Biden talked about Ukraine for 43 minutes before he got to anything about the United States?
I didn't realize it was 43 minutes, but it definitely was a long time.
It was the state of Ukraine, for sure. I believe he'll talk about COVID, and he will probably talk about that in reference to his ending of the pandemic under his leadership, because as you may have heard, Joe has announced that the end of the COVID emergency will occur in May.
Yeah.
So 4 months from now.
But why not? But why not now?
Oh my God. Okay, so Joe's back there, so he might.
Let me get my predictions real quick.
What's that?
I got predictions. I think he's going to talk about lowering the deficit by $1.4 trillion, despite it being compared to the $2.8 trillion that was spent on COVID, and just no longer having that COVID spending. He's going to lie about closing the debt. He's going to lie about reducing gas prices.
He'll lie about jobs.
He's going to say that he inherited a economy that was in dire straits, that was collapsing. That's going to be a lie.
Yes.
He's going to lie. He's going to say that he secured the border when he hasn't.
Yes.
He's going to say he increased domestic oil and gas production when he actually killed it and moved and got oil from overseas rather than doing it domestically. I'm predicting those particular lies when he's trying to bolster his case for why he's doing great things and completely ignore all the terrible thing he had. Because, of course, he's not going to talk about the things he's done wrong.
Yeah, so I think in addition to things he's going to talk about, I think he's going to talk about some kind of trans rights issues and probably talk about Roe v. Wade and abortion rights.
Most likely, yeah.
And probably about the Supreme Court. Things that he will not talk about. He will not talk about the truth of the economy. He won't talk about how prices are up. He will probably continue to lie about how they're down. He will not talk about eggs. Eggs is an important issue to me. He will not talk about the balloon. He will not talk about Hunter's emails and how they apparently show that he wrote them with the deep understanding of classified intelligence about Ukraine.
Directly just putting in intelligence documents into it.
Yes. He also will not talk about his classified document scandal. And lastly, I think he will also not talk about Venn diagrams. Because not for any particular reason, just because that's Kamala's thing, not really his thing. So I thought it was an easy win.
Yeah, yeah, most likely. So I think that's probably what he's going to be talking about is a lot of lies about accomplishments and not talking about. You definitely probably will bring up Ukraine.
I mean, we spent more money on Ukraine than we did on the regular military.
Well,
this year,
I think that Biden will see that as being a bipartisan victory that most people watching, in his opinion, will agree with.
You know what he's going to talk about? I bet you he talks about how unfortunate it is that the Republicans took certain people off the committees vindictively.
Yeah,
which is inappropriate for him to comment on business of a different.
It's also what the Democrats did, but whatever. They did the same thing. They set the precedent. They can't make the rule and make the standard, then not want to have it held to them as well.
Who do you think some of his guests are going to be? So I know there's been lists out, but Dyer and I didn't read them because
I have no idea.
We have jobs. I'm going to guess there'll be some kind of gender non-conforming guest. I'm guessing that there will be
probably military ones. I will be military, gender non-conforming.
Okay, I guess as a Crawford, you can get bonus points if it's one person who's both things. But do you think he will have a member of the military as a guest? And what kind of member of the military? Like somebody who was injured, maybe?
No, only if they are.
What if he has?
Is that Milley right there?
I think so. Milley should not be wearing a uniform. Milley is in a civilian. He's retired. So
advisory role.
Yes, technically, Mark Milley is retired from the military. He's not active duty. And while it is in order for a retired military veteran to wear their dress uniform, that is a privilege that they have. I believe that if you're going to serve as a military advisor, I think that we should have a law that says that you are not to wear your dress uniform because I think it confuses your position as a civilian advisor.
Further, I think that someone who's committed treason, admitted to it, should probably also not be allowed to wear the uniform.
Yes, there's a couple of existing laws that say that Milley shouldn't be wearing the uniform, but so let's see here. Do you think that he'll talk about how his son died in Iraq or Afghanistan again?
And due to freaking the burn pits?
Hold that thought.
Yes.
I believe the president will first hand copies of his speech.
This is PBS Public Broadcasting. We all own this. I paid for this with my taxes, so I feel no obligation to
that itself is made for some memorable
feel like this is a copyright infringement.
And the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said he's not going to rip up the speech this year.
Oh my God, Jesus Christ! Wow, PBS. Hopefully they don't rip up the speech this year. Wow, that was a dig. All right.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor to present to you the President of the United States.
Milley's like, but I thought that was me.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you. You can smile. It's okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Please. Mr. Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, good to see you guys up there. Members of Congress,
Who's that other guy with Jill?
by the way, Chief
that her
Justice,
bull?
I may need a court order. She gets to go to the game tomorrow, next
God.
week. I have to stay home. Got to work something out here. Members of the Cabinet, leaders of our military,
hell
Chief
was
Justice,
that?
Associate Justice, and retired Justice of the Supreme Court, and to you, my fellow Americans.
Just explain what you said.
You know, I start tonight by congratulating the 118th Congress and the new Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Speaker, I don't want to ruin your reputation, but I look forward to working with you. And I want to congratulate the new leader of the House Democrats, the first African-American minority leader in history, Hakeem Jeffries.
Democrats only
He
gave it
won
to
in
him
spite
when
of
it
the fact
didn't
I
matter.
campaigned for him. Congratulations to the longest-serving leader in the history of the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell. Where are you, Mitch? And congratulations to Chuck Schumer, another term as Senate Minority Leader. I think you. Only this time you have a slightly bigger majority, Mr. Leader. You're the majority leader. About that much bigger? Yeah. Well, I tell you what. I want to give special recognition to someone who I think is going to be considered the greatest speaker in the history of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi.
Certainly the richest.
Folks, the story of America is a story of progress and resilience, of always moving forward, of never, ever giving up. It's a story unique among all nations. We're the only country that has emerged from every crisis we've ever entered stronger than we got into it. Look, folks, that's what we're doing again. 2 years ago, the economy was reeling. I stand here tonight after we've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs. More jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years because of you all, because of the American people. 2 years ago.
Drink.
And 2 years ago, COVID had shut down. Our businesses were closed.
Democrats
our
shut down
schools
your
were
businesses.
robbed of so much. Today, COVID no longer controls our lives. And 2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threat to the
released
Civil
some
War.
controls from our
Today,
life.
though bruised, our democracy remains unbowed and unbroken.
Who bruised it? Also, if it's over, why are we still going till May?
Yeah, why are we going till May?
As we gather here tonight, we're writing the next chapter in the great American story, a story of progress and resilience. When world leaders ask me to define America, and they do, believe it or not, I can define it in one word, and I mean this: possibilities. We don't think anything is beyond our capacity. Everything is a possibility. You know, we're often told that Democrats and Republicans can't work together. But over the past 2 years, we've proved the cynics and naysayers wrong. Yes, we disagreed plenty. And yes, there were times when Democrats went alone. But time and again, Democrats and Republicans came together to defend a stronger and safer Europe. It came together to pass once in a generation infrastructure law, building bridges connecting our nation and our people. We came together to pass the most significant law ever, helping victims exposed to toxic burn pits. And in fact,
Bo already. Wow, he's running through our whole list in the first 5 minutes. Jesus Christ.
We did not read the script.
Yeah, for real.
it's important.
Oh my God, is she like a pod person?
In fact, I signed over 300 bipartisan pieces of legislation since becoming president, from reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act to the Electoral Count Reform Act, the Respect for Marriage Act that protects the right to marry the person you love. And to my Republican friends, if we could work together the last Congress, there's no reason we can't work together and find consensus on important things in this Congress as well. I think folks, you all are as informed as I am, but I think the people sent us a clear message. Fighting for the sake of fighting, power for the sake of power, conflict for the sake of conflict gets us nowhere. That's always been my vision of our country, and I know it's many of yours. To restore the soul of this nation, to rebuild the backbone of America, America's middle class, and to unite the country. We've been sent here to finish the job, in my view. For decades, the middle class has been hollowed out in more than, and not one administration, but for a long time. Too many good-paying manufacturing jobs move overseas. Factories closed down. Once thriving cities and towns that many of you represent became shadows of what they used to be. And along the way, something else we lost: pride, our sense of self-worth. I ran for president to fundamentally change things, to make sure our economy works for everyone, so we can all feel that pride.
Plagiarizing Obama.
To build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down. Because when the middle class does well, the poor have a ladder up, and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well.
Oh my God, Bernie. He's in a mess. Actual
I know
psychopath.
a lot of you always kid me for always quoting my dad, but my dad used to say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. He really would say this. It's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay, and mean it.
You look your kid in the eye and say, honey?
So let's look at the results. We're not finished yet by any stretch of the imagination. But unemployment rate is at 3.4%, a 50-year low.
Yeah.
A near record unemployment. Near record unemployment for black and Hispanic workers. We've already created, your help,
you know why it's
800,000 good-paying manufacturing
Trump
jobs.
has the record.
The fastest growth in 40 years. And where is it written? Where is it written that America can't lead the world in manufacturing? And I don't know where that's written. For too many decades, we imported projects and exported
but he
jobs.
actually did help that.
Now, thanks to what you've all done, we're exporting American products and creating American jobs. Folks, inflation has been a global problem because the pandemic disrupted.
It has been a global problem, but nowhere as big a problem has it been than here.
Brutal war in Ukraine
and not due to the
disrupted
pandemic,
energy
due to government
supplies
policy.
as well as food supplies, blocking all that grain in Ukraine. But we're better positioned than any country on earth right now. But we have more to do. But here at home, inflation is coming down. Here at home, gas prices are down $1.50 from their peak. Food inflation is coming down, not fast enough, but coming down.
So Ukraine being low on grain, it should not affect us.
6 months.
Yeah.
Well, take-home pay
gas
has
is still
gone up.
$3, which is down from $4, but it's still
over
up
the
from
last 2
$1.50
years,
under Trump.
A record 10 million Americans applied to start new businesses. 10 million. And by the way, every time someone starts a small business is an act of hope. And Madam Vice President, I want to thank you.
And then you crushed them
for leading
by
that
saying they got to be
effort to ensure
closed.
the small
And you
businesses
hired
have access to capital
87,000 IRS agents
and
to
historic
hunt them
laws
down.
we
And you
enacted
exempt
that are gonna
large
just come into
businesses so they can
being.
stay open so that the
Standing
small
here
businesses
last year,
die.
Yeah.
I shared with you a story of American genius and possibilities. Semiconductors, Small computer chips the size of a fingerprint that power everything from cell phones to automobiles and so much more. These chips were invented in America. Let's get that straight. They were invented in America. We used to make 40% of the world's chips. In the last several decades, we lost our edge. We're down to only producing 10%. We all saw what happened during the pandemic when chip factories shut down overseas. Today's automobiles need 3,000 chips, each of those automobiles. But American automobiles couldn't make enough cars because there weren't enough chips. Car prices went up, people got laid off. So did everything from refrigerators to cell phones. We can never let that happen again. That's why we came together to pass the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act.
Chips are really like almost like oil at this point. It's almost like an equivalent to energy to power our modern economy. I don't care which party's doing it. I don't even care how much it costs. We need as many productive chip plants in America as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Productive being a key worker.
We're going to make sure the supply chain for America
it's not a Biden-only policy. It's bipartisan.
The supply chain begins in America.
Again, keyword there is effective. If these are going to be boondoggles and money wasters and cylindros, I don't want anything to do with them.
800,000 new manufacturing jobs without this law. Before the law
I don't have faith that the Biden admin has the ability to do that the most efficient and best way.
I don't either, but I think it's going to take longer than 2 years to get over the finish line,
to the middle of the country as well.
Republican president to do.
That's going to come from companies
Yeah.
that have announced more than $300 billion in investment in American manufacturing over the next few years. Outside of Columbus, Ohio, Intel is building semiconductor factories on 1,000 acres, literally a field of dreams. It's going to create 10,000 jobs, that one investment, 7,000 construction jobs, 3,000 jobs in those factories once they're finished. They call them factories. Jobs paying an average of $130,000 a year, and many do not require a college degree.
I need to get me one of them.
Jobs. Because we work together, these jobs where people don't have to leave home to search for opportunity. And it's just getting started. Think about the new homes, the small businesses, the medium-sized businesses. So much more that's going to be needed to support those 3,000 permanent jobs and the factories that are going to be built. Talk to mayors and governors, Democrats and Republicans, and they'll tell you what this means for their communities. We're seeing these field of dreams transform to the heartland. But to maintain the strongest economy in the world, we need the best infrastructure in the world. And folks, as you all know, we used to be #1 in the world in infrastructure. We've sunk to 13th in the world. The United States of America, 13th in the world in infrastructure, modern infrastructure. But now we're coming back because we came together and passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, the largest investment in infrastructure since President Eisenhower.
The smallest percent going to infrastructure, though. You've got something like 80% of that bill going to non-infrastructure programs.
This is the same president also put money towards policies that only benefited people based on their skin color.
Yes.
Including major airports from Boston to Atlanta to Portland. Projects that are going to put thousands of people to work rebuilding our highways, our bridges, our railroads, our tunnels, ports, airports, clean water, high-speed internet, all across America. Urban, rural, tribal. And folks, we're just getting started. We're just getting started. And I mean it sincerely. I want to thank my Republican friends who voted for the law, and my Republican friends who voted against it as well. But I still get asked to fund the projects in those districts as well. But don't worry. I promised I'd be a president for all Americans. We'll fund these projects. And I'll see you at the groundbreaking. Look. This This law will further unite all of America. Projects like Brent Spence Bridge in Kentucky over the Ohio River, built 60 years ago, badly needed repairs, one of the nation's most congested freight routes, carrying $2 billion worth of freight every single day across the Ohio River. And folks, I've been talking about fixing it for decades, but we're really finally going to get it done. Yes. I went there last month with Democrats and Republicans and from both states to deliver a commitment of $1.6 billion for this project. And while I was there, I met a young woman named Sarah, who's here tonight. I don't know where Sarah is. Is she up in the box? I don't know. Sarah, how are you? Well, Sarah, for 30 years, I learned, she told me she'd been a proud member of the Iron Workers Local 44, known as the Cowboys in the Sky. The folks who built Cincinnati's skyline. Sarah said she can't wait to be 10 stories above the Ohio River building that new bridge. God bless her. That's pride. And that's what we're also building. We're building back pride. Look, we're also replacing poisonous lead pipes that go into 10 million homes in America, 400,000 school and child care centers. So every child in America can drink the water instead of having permanent damage to their brain. Look, we're making sure that every community in America has access to affordable high-speed internet. No parent should have to drive by McDonald's parking lot to help them do their homework online with their kids, which many thousands were doing across the country. And when we do these projects, and again, I get criticized for this, but I make no excuses for it, we're going to buy American. We're going to buy America. Folks, and it's totally consistent with international trade rules. Buy America has been the law since 1933, but for too long, past administrations, Democrat and Republican, have fought to get around it. Not anymore. Tonight, I'm announcing new standards that require all construction materials used in federal infrastructure projects to be made in America.
So they're going to be extremely expensive?
Well, I don't care if they're expensive. I mean, if we're spending a lot of tax dollars anyways, and it's going back into the economy, but I just don't believe that it's going to be. Those are going to be really strict requirements that only a few select companies can actually achieve, though. Your mom and pop fiber laying company isn't going to be able to achieve the requirements that Biden's going to have for that. It's going to be Buy American, but you got to have a gay black tranny on your board and owning your company and all that stuff.
It's fine to buy America first, but if the supply is insufficient, restricting you from being able to buy from overseas will slow down projects and make them more expensive.
I don't think there's anything you can buy from America that we would have an insufficient supply, except for the fact that we have essentially outlawed the production of energy in this country. Release the energy, and we will produce an infinite amount of anything that you need to buy.
Well, that's why I get that. That's why we're building an economy where no one's left behind. Jobs are coming back. Pride is coming back. Because choices we made in the last several years. You know, this is, in my view, a blue-collar blueprint to rebuild America and make a real difference in your lives at home. For example, too many of you lay in bed at night like my dad did, staring at the ceiling, wondering what in God's name happens if your spouse gets cancer, or your child gets deadly ill, or something happens to you. What are you going to have? You get money to pay for those medical bills? Or you're going to have to sell the house or try to get a second mortgage on it. I get it. I get it. With the Inflation Reduction Act that I signed into law, we're taking on powerful interests to bring health care costs down so you can sleep better at night. with more security. You know, we pay more for prescription drugs than any nation in the world. Let me say it again. We pay more for prescription drugs than any major nation on earth.
Well,
For
how
example,
else is Pfizer
1
going
in
to
10 Americans
sponsor
has
satanic
diabetes.
rituals?
Many of you
like,
in this chamber do.
won't you think of
in
the
the
satanic
audience.
rituals? Come on.
Yeah.
But every day, millions need insulin to control their diabetes so they can literally stay alive. Insulin's been around for over 100 years. The guy who invented it didn't even patent it because he wanted it to be available for everyone. It cost the drug companies roughly $10 a vial to make that insulin. Packaged and all, you may get up to $13. But Big Pharma has been unfairly charging people hundreds of dollars, $400 to $500 a month, making record profits. Not anymore. Not anymore. So many things that we did are only now coming to fruition. We said we were doing this, and we said we passed the law to do it, but people didn't know because the law didn't take effect until January 1 of this year. We capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors on Medicare. People are just finding out. I'm sure you're getting the same calls I'm getting. Look, there are millions of other Americans who do not or are not on Medicare, including 200,000 young people with type 1 diabetes and need this insulin to stay alive. Let's finish the job this time. Let's cap the cost of insulin for everybody at $35. Folks, and Big Pharma is still going to do very well, I promise you all. I promise you they're going to do very well. This law also caps and won't even go into effect until 2025. Costs, out-of-pocket drug costs for seniors on Medicare at a maximum of $2,000 a year. You don't have to pay more than $2,000 a year, no matter how much your drug costs are. Because you know why? You all know it. Many of you, like many in my family, have cancer. You know the drugs can range from $10,000, $11,000, $14,000, $15,000 for the cancer drugs. If drug prices rise faster than inflation, drug companies are going to have to pay Medicare back the difference. We're finally giving Medicare the power to negotiate drug prices, bringing down.
You know, I love a utopian fantasy as much as the next leftist, but I mean, Dyer, how they've instituted these kind of price controls for the VA. How has that worked for your quality of care?
They try to restrict it.
Your cost is really low, right? How's your quality?
Yeah. Cost is low, quality is horrible, and there's lots of delays because they will hope that we will just die before receiving treatment. Which is, by the way, the entire UK system.
Yeah, you fast forward to what Canada is doing, where they won't even wait for you to die. They'll just say, "Well, would you like to suicide yourself?
Can we help you?
Sorry, I mean dying with dignity. I probably just got us banned.
But that the government already showed its hand saying that it's a cost-saving procedure. They plan on increasing the suicides so they can save more money.
Yeah, 20 years from now, you're going to be seeing a State of the Union where Hunter Biden will be saying, "We're going to cap the cost of assisted suicide."
Anything to raise the cost of prescription drugs, I will veto it.
Raise the cost of what?
Look. I'm pleased to say the more Americans help
consumer product.
What's that?
Why would the government pass a bill to intentionally increase the cost of a consumer product? That doesn't make sense.
I don't know.
Thanks to the law I signed last year, saving millions or saving $800 a year on their premiums. And by the way, that law was written and the benefit expires in 2025. So my plea to some of you, at least in this audience, let's finish the job and make these savings permanent. Expand coverage of Medicaid. Look, the Inflation Reduction Act is also the most significant investment ever in climate change. Ever. Lowering utility bills, creating American jobs, leading the world to a clean energy future. I visited the devastating aftermath of record floods, droughts, storms, and wildfires from Arizona to Mexico to all the way up to the Canadian border. More timber has been burned, as I've observed from helicopters, than the entire state of Missouri. And we don't have global warming? Not a problem. In addition to emergency recovery, from Puerto Rico to Florida to Idaho, we're rebuilding for the long term.
Those are all catch-up burns. Those are all the results of terrible forest management, zero controlled burns in our forests, building up hundreds of tons of rotting timber over the course of 50 years in all the national forests. And guess what? That wood's got to go somewhere. And before humans, it would have just burned naturally. But now that we've been keeping these back, you build and build and build the pressure. That wood's got to go somewhere eventually. It becomes more and more likely to catch on fire the longer you do that. We're just having catch-up burns right now. And there's really not much you can do about that.
Stewards of our land. Let's face reality. The climate crisis doesn't care if you're in a red or blue state. It's an existential threat. We have an obligation, not to ourselves, but to our children and grandchildren, to confront it. I'm proud of how America, at last, is stepping up to the challenge. We're still going to need oil and gas for a while. But guess what? No, we do. But there's so much more to do. We got to finish the job. And we pay for these investments in our future by finally making the wealthiest and biggest corporations begin to pay their fair share. Just begin.
Imagine how rich your great-great-great-great-grandkids are going to be, Dyer, when all of these investments finally start paying back.
I'm a capitalist, but pay your fair share. I think a lot of you at home agree with me and many people that you know. The tax system is not fair.
Yeah, because we're at home watching you guys on TV, somehow not having to pay taxes, somehow becoming multi-millionaires when you make $100,000 a year.
The idea that in 2020, 55 of the largest corporations in America, the Fortune 500, made $40 billion in profits and paid zero in federal taxes? Zero?
Because we made unprecedented investments into domestic infrastructure.
Billion-dollar companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. God love them. 15%. That's less than a nurse pays. And let me be crystal clear. I said at the very beginning, under my plans, as long as I'm president, nobody earning less than $400,000 will pay an additional penny in taxes. Nobody, not one penny.
That's been fact-checked quite a few times this fall, but okay.
There's more to do. We have to reward work, not just wealth. Pass my proposal for the billionaire minimum tax. You know, there's 1,000 billionaires in America. It's up from about 600 in the beginning of the term. But no billionaire should be paying a lower tax rate than a school teacher or firefighter. I mean it. Think about
it. What Joe's talking about is this plan to tax capital gains, which is impossible, or unrealized capital gains, which is impossible because you would have to then sell the underlying asset to pay for the taxes.
Have you noticed Big Oil just reported its profits, record profits? Last year they made $200 billion in the midst of a global energy crisis. I think it's outrageous. Why? They invested too little of that profit to increase domestic production. And when I talk to a couple of them, they say, we're afraid you're going to shut down all the oil wells, all the oil refineries anyway, so why should we invest in them? I said, we're going to need oil for at least another decade.
Well, whether we need it or not, that's not the debate. Their fear is accurate.
We're going to need it. Production.
What did he say?
If they had, in fact, invested in it, that's going to exceed. We're going to need oil for at least another decade. And that's going to exceed. And beyond that, we're going to need it. Production.
At least another decade until
if they had, in fact,
completely
invested
solar
in the
wind.
production to keep gas prices down. Instead, they used the record profits to buy back their own stock, rewarding their CEOs and shareholders. Corporations ought to do the right thing. That's why I propose we quadruple the tax on corporate stock buybacks and encourage long-term investment.
I agree with that.
They'll still make considerable profit.
I say tax stock buybacks at 100%.
Let's finish the job and close the loopholes that allow very wealthy to avoid paying their taxes. Instead of cutting the number of audits for wealthy taxpayers, I just signed a law to reduce the deficit by $114 billion by cracking down on wealthy tax cheats. That's being
like Hunter Biden, who is currently under investigation for something like $50,000 of back taxes.
My administration has cut the deficit by more than $1.7 trillion, the largest deficit reduction in American history. Under the previous administration, the American deficit went up 4 years in a row. Because those record deficits, no president added more to the national debt in any 4 years than my predecessor. Nearly 25% of the entire national debt that took over 200 years to accumulate was added by just one administration alone, the last one. They're the facts. Check it out. Check it out. How did Congress respond to that debt? They did the right thing. They lifted the debt ceiling 3 times without preconditions or crisis. They paid American bills to prevent an economic disaster in the country. So tonight I'm asking the Congress to follow suit. Let's commit here tonight to the full faith and credit of the United States of America will never, ever be questioned.
But also, you should, keep paying.
Yeah, it's like not even worth responding to that. It's like not even worth responding to it.
Unless I agree to their economic plans. All of you at home should know what those plans are. Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans.
I sure hope Boebert screams something inappropriate again. I love when she does that.
Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my... Some Republicans. I
didn't hear what he said.
Want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority.
That's a lie. Let me give you. He said Republicans wanted to sunset. That's not true. They said that they said that they weren't going to do that.
I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote.
Yeah, people yelling liar at him.
Well, I'm glad to see you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion.
Get him, Marjorie.
It means if Congress doesn't keep the programs the way they are, they'd go away. Other Republicans say, I'm not saying it's a majority of you. I don't even think it's even a significant, but it's being proposed by individuals. I'm not politely not naming them, but it's being proposed by some of you.
Do you know all the shit your party proposes?
Folks,
have you heard some of the crazy cockamamie stuff?
We're not going to be moved into being threatened to default on the debt if we don't respond.
The crazy crap that Democrats say. We can just apply that to the whole party now? Yeah, we do anyways. All right, if that's the game you want to play.
He's alive
as we all apparently agree.
It has no credibility.
Social Security and Medicare is off the books now, right? They're not to be charged? All right.
Actually, that was rather tactful. He did just kind of trap the Republicans into never touching that.
Social Security and Medicare are lifelines.
I'll give him that.
Americans have to pay into them from the very first paycheck they started. So tonight, let's all agree, and we currently are. Let's stand up for seniors.
Fuck seniors. They made this economy. They built this world.
Social Security.
I'm just trying to survive it.
Medicare. Those benefits belong to the American people. They earned it. And if anyone tries to cut Social Security, which apparently no one's going to do, and if anyone tries to cut Medicare, I'll stop them. I'll veto it. And look, I'm not going to allow them to take away be taken away. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. But apparently it's not going to be a problem. Next month, when I offer my fiscal plan, I ask my Republican friends to lay down their plan as well. I really mean it. Let's sit down together and discuss our mutual plans together. Let's do that. I can tell you, the plan I'm going to show you is going to cut the deficit by another $2 trillion. And it won't cut a single bit of Medicare or Social Security. In fact, we're going to extend the Medicare Trust Fund at least 2 decades, because that's going to be the next argument. How do we keep it solvent, right? Well, we'll not raise tax on anyone making under 400 grand, but we'll pay for it the way we talked about tonight, by making sure that the wealthy and big corporations pay their fair share. Look. Here's the deal. They aren't just taking advantage of the tax code. They're taking advantage of you, the American consumer. Here's my message to all of you out there. I have your back. We're already preventing Americans from receiving surprise medical bills, stopping $1 billion surprise bills per month so far. We're protecting seniors' life savings by cracking down on nursing homes that commit fraud, endanger patient safety, prescribe drugs that are not needed.
Let them vote Democrat.
Save thousands of dollars because they can finally get a hearing aid over the counter without a prescription. Look, capitalism without competition is not capitalism. It's extortion. It's exploitation. Last year, I cracked down with the help of many of you on foreign shipping companies that were making you pay higher prices for every good coming into the country. I signed a bipartisan bill that cut shipping costs by 90%, helping American farmers, businessmen, and consumers. Let's finish the job. Pass the bipartisan legislation to strengthen antitrust enforcement and prevent big online platforms from giving their own products an unfair advantage. My administration is also taking on junk fees, those hidden surcharges too many companies use to make you pay more. For example, we're making airlines show you the full ticket price up front, refund your money if your flight is canceled or delayed. We've reduced exorbitant bank overdrafts by saving consumers more than $1 billion a year. We're cutting credit card late fees by 75%, from $30 to $8. Look.
It's an awful strange micromanaging. I don't even necessarily disagree with all of it, but it's just strange micromanaging from the executive office that Biden's going to take an interest in my credit card bill. It's just, it's too micromanaging.
When a company overcharges you and gets away with it. Not anymore. We've written a bill to stop it all. It's called the Junk Fee Prevention Act. We're going to ban surprise resort fees that hotels charge on your bill. Those fees can cost you up to $90 a night at hotels that aren't even resorts. The idea that cable, internet, and cell phone companies can charge you $200 or more if you decide to switch to another provider. Give me a break. We can stop service fees on tickets to concerts and sporting events and make companies disclose all the fees up front. And we'll prohibit airlines from charging $50 round trip for a family just to be able to sit together. Baggage fees are bad enough. Airlines can't treat your child like a piece of baggage. Americans are tired of being. We're tired of being.
I hate all this hidden fee stuff. I know Europe has some laws and regulations around that, but this is a congressional matter. This isn't something for the president to be leading. Weird fees on your receipt. This is a congressional issue. Why is the commander in chief in the middle on the 90 seconds to midnight of World War III, we just had a major incursion in our domestic airspace, and he's worried about whether or not I'm going to pay $30 or $50 for an extra checked bag. I mean, I would like to pay $30, but I just don't see how that's an appropriate thing for him to be worried about.
Yeah, it doesn't seem the appropriate use of his attention.
But they just changed it because we exposed it. That was part of the deal, guys. Look it up. But not anymore. We're banning those agreements so companies have to compete for workers and pay them what they're worth. And I must tell you, This is bound to get a response from my friends on my left but the right. I'm so sick and tired of companies breaking the law by preventing workers from organizing. Pass the PRO Act. Because business has a right.
All right, what's the 1870 buttons they all got on? I see much of the Democrats have these buttons that say 1870.
I have no idea.
I don't know either.
I can look it up.
Yeah.
Let's make sure working parents can afford to raise a family with sick days, paid family medical leave, affordable child care. That's going to enable millions of more people to go and stay at work. And let's restore the full child tax credit, which gave tens of millions of parents some breathing room and cut child poverty in half to the lowest level in history. And by the way, when we do all these things, we increase productivity. We increase economic growth. So let's finish the job and get more families access to affordable quality
1870
housing.
was the first recorded killing by a police officer of a quote-unquote unarmed black
Let's
man.
give more breathing room to millions of family caregivers
I'm guessing
looking
in
after
America.
their loved ones.
Because
Pass
black
my
people existed
plan
before that.
so we get seniors
They
and
did.
people with disabilities the home care and services they need. And support the workers who are doing God's work. These plans are fully paid for and we can afford to do them. Restoring the dignity of work means making education an affordable ticket to the middle class. You know, when we made public education, 12 years of it universal in the last century, we made the best
Stop
educated,
subsidizing
best
shit
became the
degrees
best
then.
educated, best paid nation in the
Only
world.
subsidize STEM degrees.
rest
Stop
of us caught
subsidizing the other ones.
It's caught up. Jill, my wife, who teaches full time, has an expression. I hope I get it right, kid. Any nation that out-educates us is going to out-compete us. Any nation that out-educates is going to out-compete us. Folks, we all know
I do not
12
believe that
years
she's a
of
full-time
education
teacher. There's no way.
is not enough
There's
to
no
win the
way.
economic competition
doubt
of the 21st century.
How is she the acting president of the United States and a full-time teacher? How does she do it?
By providing access to preschool for 3 and 4 years old. Studies show that children who go to preschool are nearly 50% more likely to finish high school and go on to
Children that go to preschool are 50% more likely to be trans, too.
where they came from.
Yikes.
Teachers are raised. We're making progress by reducing student debt, increasing Pell Grants for working and middle-class families. Let's finish the job and connect students to career opportunities starting in high school. Provide access to 2 years of community college, the best career training in America, in addition to being a pathway to a 4-year degree.
I just took a 12-hour JavaScript course on YouTube for free. It was on a channel called Bro Code. The classes were led by Bro. And it was probably worth about 10 grand and would have taken me 2 semesters to complete in a university setting. And I was able to do it in 3 days on YouTube. You don't really need to go to college, guys. You just need to. You need to find motivation, and you're not going to find that in college.
I have a list of different websites that have a bunch of professional development courses that are on a whole range of subjects, and they're free.
Yes.
There's reasons they go to college, but a lot of people go for the right reasons.
We opened our country back up, and soon we'll end the public health emergency. But
you could end it right now.
That's called a public health emergency.
It's a epidemic of
But we'll
government
remember
policy.
the toll and pain that's never going to go away. More than 1 million Americans lost their lives to COVID. 1 million. Families grieving. Children orphaned.
How many lost their lives due to bad government policy?
How many old people lost their lives because of nursing home?
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
Remembering them, we remain vigilant. We still need to monitor dozens of variants and support new vaccines and treatments. So Congress needs to fund these efforts and keep America safe.
Yeah, we got to fund.
So COVID forever.
Well, also the big bad drug companies that we were just talking about about an hour ago. Now we're back to our saviors.
Who stole relief money meant to keep workers and small businesses.
Why are they going to invest in those cures and treatments if they can't get the guarantee of a benefit on the back end?
Because they just like killing us.
Before I came to office, you remember, during that campaign,
Pfizer has some sacrifices to make. That's why.
Who would protect taxpayers' dollars who were sidelined. They were fired. Many people said we don't need them.
Well, all the nurses were fired for
And fraud
not wanting to
became
get
rampant.
vaccinated.
Last year, I told you the watchdogs are back. Since then, we've recovered billions of taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, those billions of
Now
dollars,
let's triple the
70% of
anti-fraud
it
strike
came
force
from
going after
people
these
who
criminals.
are under
Double the statute
middle
of limitations
class,
on these crimes.
under the 50th
Crack down on
percentile.
identity fraud.
You
It's
took
all about millionaires and
billions
billionaires.
of dollars from
Billions
the
of dollars
under
from the
50
American
percentile.
Those new tax IRS employees are not meant for going after the rich. They're meant for going after you.
Yes.
Fraud, the taxpayers get back at least 10 times as much. It matters. It matters. Look, COVID left its scars, like the spike in violent crime in 2020. First year of the pandemic. We have an obligation to make sure all people are safe.
What?
Safety depends on public trust, as all of us know.
What?
Too often that trust is violated.
Oh my
Join
god.
us
I don't
tonight
even know how to
with
respond to
parents
that.
Yes.
of Tyree Nichols.
I see so many
speechless.
things wrong with
Welcome.
that statement.
I am less speech.
It was COVID. It wasn't the releasing of criminals back on the street.
Oh god, these are. Oh, this is Tyree Nichols' parents, I guess. Jesus.
We had to bury Tyree last week. As many of you personally know, there's no words to describe the heartache or grief of losing a child. But imagine if you lost that child at the hands of the law. Imagine having to worry whether your son or daughter came home from walking down the street, or playing in the park, or just driving a car. Most of us in here have never had to have the talk.
You know,
The talk.
how many
that
white
brown and
people
black
have been
parents
killed
have had to have with
by
their children?
police
Bo,
unjustly
Hunter, Ashley,
have
my
been
children.
invited to this
I never had
the
to
State
have
of the
the talk
Union?
with them.
No.
I never had to tell them if a police officer pulls you over, turn your interior lights on right away.
Well, yeah, you don't gotta tell Hunter
Don't
that he's gotta
reach
put his
for your
hands up
license.
for a cop because they're gonna just
Keep
let
your
him
hands on
go.
the
I
steering
mean,
wheel.
Yeah.
is he really referencing that he didn't have to
Imagine
give
having
Hunter the
worry
talk
like that
because?
every single time.
I mean, really, that's a
He's got
little
the
on the
car.
nose with how many crimes Hunter's
Here's
committed.
what
I mean,
Tyree's mother
is
shared
he
with me
serious
when I
right
spoke
now?
to her.
It's a
When
different
I
kind of
asked her,
privilege
she
that
finds
Hunter
the
seems to
courage
have. I don't think it's
carry
because he's
on and
white.
speak out.
Yeah, I think it's because he's your son.
The faith of God, she said her
And
son
you
was,
sell your
quote,
influence.
a beautiful soul, and
Oh, my.
something good will come of this. Imagine how much courage and courage that takes.
Just as talented as white kids.
It's up to us, all of us.
Thanks.
We all want the same thing. Neighborhoods free of violence. Law enforcement who earns the community's trust. Just as every cop, when they pin on that badge in the morning, has a right to be able to go home at night, so does everybody else out there. Our children have a right to come home safely. Equal protection under the law is a covenant we have with each other in America. We know police officers put their lives on the line every single night and day. And we know we ask them in many cases to do too much, to be counselors, social workers, psychologists, responding to drug overdoses, mental health crises, and so much more. In one sense, we ask much too much of them. I know most cops and their families are good, decent, honorable people, the vast majority. But they risk and they risk their lives every time they put that shield on. But what happened to Tyree in Memphis happens too often. We have to do better.
Yep, black people killing other
Give law
black people.
enforcement the real
It's a
training
problem.
they need.
You
Hold
know,
them to higher standards.
Hiring
Help
gangsters
them
instead of
succeed in
having
keeping
high
it safe.
standards for your police officers.
We also need more first responders and professionals to address the growing mental health, substance abuse challenges. More resources to reduce violent crime and gun crime. More community intervention programs. More investment in housing, education, and job training.
Are we talking about the programs where they're giving out crack pipes, the designer Pyrex crack pipes? Is that
Yes,
what we're talking about?
government-funded crack usage.
The police departments violate the public trust. They must be held accountable. With the support of the families of victims, civil rights groups, and law enforcement, I signed an executive order for all federal officers, banning chokeholds, restricting no-knock warrants, and other key elements of the George Floyd Act. Let's commit ourselves to make the words of Tyler's mom true. Something good must come from this. Something good. And all of us, folks, it's difficult, but it's simple. All of us in this chamber, we need to rise to this moment. We can't turn away. Let's do what we know in our hearts that we need to do. Let's come together to finish the job on police reform. Do something. Do something. That was the plea of parents who lost their children.
They did do something. What happened
a few weeks ago? Doing something.
It was specifically a result of them doing something. It was the strike team that those guys were a part of was designed around the increase in crime in the last 2 years, and they were hired due to a decrease in standards to try to make the police force more look like the community. I mean, what happened was a direct result of doing something.
Keeping guns out of the hands of people who are a danger to themselves and others.
Key lesson, don't let Democrats do things.
Joining us tonight is Brandon Say, a 26-year-old hero. Brandon put his college dreams on hold to be at his mom's side. His mom's side when she was dying from cancer. And Brandon now works at the dance studio started by his grandparents. And 2 weeks ago, during the Lunar New Year celebrations, he heard the studio door close, and he saw a man standing there pointing a semi-automatic pistol at him. He thought he was going to die, but he thought about the people inside. And in that instant, he found the courage to act and wrestled a semi-automatic pistol away from the gunman who had already killed 11 people in another dance studio.
So why? So
he saved lives.
Wouldn't it be nicer though? I mean, how many people?
It's time we do the same.
How many people just this year
were
able to stop? Able to stop mass shootings with another gun.
Yeah.
Defensive use of firearms is huge, and those guys don't. Oh my god! And so, hey, this kid's a hero. This kid, if he disarmed with his bare hands, absolute hero. 100%. But same mentality. You had last year. You had that mall shooting. That 18-year-old with a pistol from like 200 feet away headshotted a mass shooter in a. Where's he? Why isn't he here? Why isn't he here?
Great question.
He headshot somebody who was shooting up a mall from like 200 feet away with a pistol and iron sights.
We have a record number of personnel working to secure the border, arresting 8,000 human smugglers, seizing over 23,000 pounds of fentanyl in just the last several months. We've launched a new border plan last month. Unlawful migration from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela has come down 97% as a consequence of that. But American border problems...
Because there's none left. They're all here.
Congress acts. If we don't pass my comprehensive immigration
I don't know what the
reform,
stats is on Haiti, but Ghana I know has like something. I think Haiti does too. It's something like 25% of the population is in America right now.
And a pathway to citizenship for dreamers. Those on temporary
You were right, Dyer. He's talking about how he lowered border crossings, which is just pure fantasy. That's
it's
nuts.
our duty to protect all the people's rights and freedoms.
That's absolutely bonkers.
I don't even know what he's basing that off of. It's just an insane thing to say.
I don't know.
Congress must restore the right that was taken away in Roe v. Wade and protect Roe v. Wade.
Drink.
Give every woman a consular right. The Vice President and I are doing everything to protect access to reproductive health care and safeguard patient safety. But already more than a dozen states are enforcing extreme abortion bans. Make no mistake about it. If Congress passes a national ban, I will veto it.
And a Fox prediction is that they will, and then when you get a DeSantis president in 24, and you have a full Republican Congress, they will never pass it again.
Transgender young people can live with safety and dignity.
Grannies!
Our strength!
Drink!
Our strength is not just the example of our power, but the power of our example. Let's remember the world's watching. I spoke in this chamber 1 year ago, just days after Vladimir Putin unleashed his brutal attack against Ukraine. A murderous assault, evoking images of death and destruction Europe suffered in World War II.
It wasn't evoking, it like showed.
Putin's invasion has been a test for the ages.
Evoking is like if it was like a poem about it.
Test for the world. Would we stand for the most basic of principles? Would we stand for sovereignty? We stand for the right of people to live free of tyranny? Would we stand for
the largest money laundering operation in Democrat history?
How about you secure our border first?
Yes.
And prevents open season on would-be aggressors and threatens our prosperity. 1 year later, we know the answer. Yes, we would, and we did. We did. And together, we did what America always does at our best. We led. We united NATO. We built a global coalition. We stood against Putin's aggression. We stood with the Ukrainian people. Tonight, we're once again joined by Ukrainian's ambassador to the United States. She represents not just her nation, but the courage of her people. Our ambassador is here.
The Pelosi
united in our support of your country. Would you stand so we can all take a look at you?
You did.
Thank you. Because we're going to stand with you as long as it takes.
And as much as it costs.
Our nation's working for more freedom, more dignity, more peace, not just in Europe, but everywhere. Before I came to office, the story was about how the People's Republic of China was increasing its power, and America was failing in the world.
Where is he
not
going to go
anymore.
with this? Is he serious?
We made clear, and I made in my personal conversations, which have been many, with President Xi, that we seek competition, not conflict. But I will make no apologies that we're investing to make America stronger. Investing in American innovation and industries that will define the future that China intends to be dominating. Investing in our alliances and working with our allies to protect advanced technologies so they will not be used against us. Modernizing our military to safeguard stability and deter aggression.
Fucking kidding me right
Today,
now?
we're in the strongest position in decades to compete with China or anyone else in the world. Anyone else in the world. And I'm committed.
He's going strong on China as his line. Really.
I'm committed to work with China where we can advance American interests and benefit the world. But make no mistake about it. As we made clear last week, if China threatens our sovereignty, we will act to protect our country.
What is the biggest threat to sovereignty? Is he fucking serious? Sovereignty? Look, like the actual technical definition.
Them push you around and piss on you.
Well, sovereignty is about securing your position and border.
We face serious challenges across the world. But in the past 2 years, democracies have become stronger, not weaker. Autocracy has grown weaker, not stronger. Name me a world leader who changed places with Xi Jinping. Name me one. Name me one. America's rallying the world to meet those challenges, from climate to global health.
I don't understand what he was
security to terrorism.
What was he
to territorial aggression.
I don't actually know.
Allies are
I
stepping up,
it out.
spending more, and doing more.
With that.
Look,
Name me a leader who would switch
The
places
bridges
with
were
Xi
forming between
Jinping.
partners in the Pacific.
Is
and
reading
the
it
Atlantic.
angrier and angrier. I don't understand where you're
Those who
going with
bet
that.
against
I
America.
mean, I think he'd like to
how
be
wrong
in,
they
you
are.
know,
It's
in
never
Well, you
been
had-
a
Xi Jinping
good
government.
bet
I mean,
against America. Never.
Trudeau said multiple times he admires the Chinese system. How it's authoritarian and can build a hospital in a week.
I don't understand how people that statement is a positive thing though.
I don't understand.
Well, when I came to office, most assured that bipartisanship assumed was impossible, but never believed it. That's why a year ago I offered a unity agenda to the nation as I stood here. We made real progress together. We passed a law making it easy for doctors to prescribe effective treatments for opioid addiction. We passed the gun safety law, making historic investments in mental health. We launched the ARPA-H drive for breakthrough in the fights against cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes, and so much more. We passed the Heath Robinson PACT Act, named after the late Iraq War veteran whose story about exposure to toxic burn kits I shared here last year. I understand something about those burn pits, but there's so much more to do.
Oh my God.
We can do it together. Joining us tonight is a father named Doug from Newton, New Hampshire. He wrote Jill, my wife, a letter, and me as well, about his courageous daughter, Courtney. A contagious laugh, his sister's best friend, her sister's best friend. He shared a story all too familiar to millions of Americans and many of you in the audience. Courtney discovered pills in high school. It spiraled into addiction and eventually death from a fentanyl overdose. She was just 20 years old. Describing the last 8 years without her, Doug said,
Where did the
There's no
fentanyl come
worse
from,
pain.
Joe? Where did it
Good
come
question.
from?
that their family has turned pain to purpose.
Did it come from
Working to
China,
end the
sold
stigma
by
and change
people
laws.
coming over the southern border?
He told us he wants to start a journey toward American recovery. Doug, we're with you. Fentanyl is killing more than 70,000 Americans a year.
You're letting it happen.
Big, you got it.
It's your fault.
I believe that was Gates. Sounded like Gates' voice.
So let's launch a major surge to stop fentanyl production and the sale and trafficking with more drug detection machines, inspection cargo, stop pills and powder at the border.
It's not coming through ports of entry. It's coming over the unsecured.
Working with couriers like FedEx to inspect more packages for drugs. Strong penalties to crack down on fentanyl trafficking. Second, let's do more on mental health, especially for our children. When millions of young people are
What we
struggling
should
with
do
bullying,
is get a bunch
violence,
of
trauma,
wolves hooked on fentanyl.
we'll
and
have
then just
greater
release
access
them
to
on the
mental health
border.
care at their schools.
Why would you do that to wolves?
We must
Well, 'cause then they
finally
would
hold
hunt
social
down
media
people carrying
companies
fentanyl and eat them.
accountable for experimenting or doing
not fair to
running
the
children
wolves.
for profit.
Well,
There's time
They
to
get to
pass
eat
bipartisan
people.
legislation to stop big tech from collecting personal
That's
data.
a myth that all wolves want to do is eat people, all right?
well, wolves high on fentanyl do.
Ban targeted advertising to children and impose stricter limits on the personal data that companies collect on all of us. Third, let's do more to keep this nation's one truly sacred obligation to equip those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home.
That's your
Job
sacred
training, job
obligation.
placement for veterans and their spouses as they come to return to civilian life. Helping veterans afford the rent, because no one should be homeless in America, especially someone who served the country.
Didn't he just like cut your pay, Dyer?
Yes, you did.
And then also like didn't give you a raise the year before?
Yep. Feeling the love. Feeling the love.
Yeah.
Dennis McDonough is here of the VA. We had a first real discussion when I asked him to take the job. I'm glad he did.
And this
We
is
were
Civvy
losing up
guy
to
who's like
25
he put in
veterans a
charge of
day
the VA.
Suicide. Now we're
I don't
losing
remember.
17 a day to the silent scourge of suicide. 17 veterans a day are
You don't
committing
treat
suicide.
people-
More than all the people being killed in the wars. Folks,
maybe the VA is
doing everything
part of
it
the
can,
reason why they're committing
including
suicide.
expanding
Well, I don't know, because
mental
like
health screening,
half of them committed
proven
suicide in the
programs that
VA parking
recruits
lot.
veterans
So
to help
Yeah.
other veterans understand what they're going through, get them the help they need. We got to do more. And fourth, last year, Jill and I reignited the cancer moonshot that I was able to start with President Obama asked me to lead our administration on this issue. Our goal is to cut the cancer death rates at least by 50% in the next 25 years. Turn more cancers from death sentences to treatable diseases. Provide more support for patients and their families. It's personal to so many of us in this audience. Joining us are Morris and Candice, an Irishman and the daughter of immigrants from Panama. They met and fell in love in New York City and got married in the same chapel Jill and I got married in New York City. Kindred spirits. He wrote us a letter about his little
they're
daughter,
also
Ava.
corrupt and sell
And
their
I saw her
influence.
just before I came over. She was just a year old when she was diagnosed with rare kidney disease, cancer. After 26 blood transfusions, 11 rounds of radiation, 8 rounds of chemo, 1 kidney removed, giving a 5% survival rate. He wrote how in the darkest moments he thought, if she goes, I can't stay. Many of you have been through that as well. Jill and I understand that like so many of you. And he read Jill's book describing our family's cancer journey and how we tried to steal moments of joy where we could with Bo. For them, that glimmer of joy was the half smile of their baby girl. It meant everything to them. They never gave up hope. Little Ava never gave up hope. She turns 4 next month. They just found out Ava's beating the odds, is on her way to being cured of cancer. And she's watching from the White House tonight if she's not asleep already. For the lives we can save.
I'm happy for her, but I feel like you're really, really tempting the fates here.
Yeah.
You should just silently thank God for that one and not made it a national spectacle, but okay.
It rallies the country and the
I
world
think it
together.
also makes him look good,
Prove
or
that
his
we can
bosses
still
look
do
good.
big
It's unrelated.
things. 20 years ago, under the leadership of President Bush and countless advocates and champions, he undertook a bipartisan effort through PEPFAR to transform the global fight against HIV/AIDS. It's been a huge success. He thought big. He thought large.
Excuse me?
He moved. I believe we can do the same thing with cancer. Let's end cancer as we know it. Cure some cancers once and for all. Folks, there's one reason why we've been able to do all of these things. Our democracy itself. It's the most fundamental thing of all. With democracy, everything's possible. Without it, nothing is. For the last few years, our democracy has been threatened and attacked, put at risk, put to the test in this very room on January the 6th.
Yep, January 6th.
And then just a few months ago, an unhinged big lie assailed and unleashed a political violence, the home of the then Speaker of the House of Representatives. Using the very same language the insurrectionists used.
That's made
as they
up.
stalked these halls and chanted on January
They made
6th.
that up.
Here tonight in this chamber is a man who bears the scars of that brutal attack,
There we go.
but is as tough and as strong, as resilient as they get.
Yep,
My
trying
friend
to-
Paul Pelosi. Paul, stand up.
Man, I nailed that. I said January 6th, linking Paul Pelosi attack to Trump. Oh, man. Good, Dyer pays me the big bucks.
Yep. That's
But such a heinous act should have never happened. We must all speak out. There's no place for political violence in America. We have to protect the right to vote, not suppress the fact
That
fundamental
was
right.
not political
Honor the results of our
violence.
elections, not subvert the will of the people.
Are you kidding
We have to
me?
uphold the rule of law and restore trust in our institutions.
There was no evidence that that was political violence.
We must give hate and extremism in any form no safe harbor. Democracy must not be a partisan issue. It's an American issue. Every generation of Americans has faced a moment where they have been called to protect our democracy, defend it, stand up for it. And this is our moment. My fellow Americans, we meet tonight at an inflection point, one of those moments that only a few generations ever face, where the direction we now take is going to decide the course of this nation for decades to come. We're not bystanders of history. We're not powerless before the forces that confront us. It's within our power of we, the people. We're facing the test of our time. We have to be the nation we've always been at our best. Optimistic, hopeful, forward-looking. A nation that embraces light over dark, hope over fear, unity over division, stability over chaos.
Truth over facts.
We have to see each other not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. We're good people. The only nation in the world built on an idea. The only one. Other nations are defined by geography, ethnicity. But we're the only nation based on an idea that all of us, every one of us, is created equal in the image of God.
We were until you guys tried to make it about
a nation
ethnicity.
That stands as a beacon of the world.
That's been your guys' thing.
A nation in a new age of possibilities. So I've come to fulfill my constitutional obligation to report in the State of the Union. And here's my report. Because the soul of this nation is strong, because the backbone of this nation is strong, because the people of this nation are strong, the State of the Union is strong.
I feel like the bombs are going to fall imminently.
Yeah.
I'm not new to this place. I stand here tonight having served as long as about any one of you have ever served here. But I've never been more optimistic about our future, about the future of America. We just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and there's nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
That was really short.
We have been listening to President Biden's
so
State
we're at
of the
10:22
Union address.
Eastern, so
He's
that
just wrapped
puts
up
that
his
at
remarks.
about
You see him shaking hands there with Vice President Kamala
80,
Harris. The
80
president will
minutes
now
or so,
make his way
maybe about
out
75
of
minutes.
the chamber, and
I
in a few
believe
minutes we'll
last
have
year
the
he was
Republican
somewhere around
response
90
to
minutes.
the
Trump, I
president's
think,
remarks as
hit
well.
almost
The
a
president
record
covering
at
a
about
wide
100
range of
minutes.
topics, hitting notes
I looked at the clock
partisanship,
wrong, to be honest, when I said
touting
that.
economic success,
I mean, it was a
so far,
decently
with
length
members of
speech,
Congress
probably a little
to
too
finish
long,
the job,
but not
as he
necessarily
said repeatedly
longer than average.
in his remarks. We are watching here alongside our panelists.
Well, I think we hit basically everything we mentioned as our predictions was accurate. I think we did predict that he would go, strong on China, or bragging about strong on China. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not surprised by him being
is he-
deluded.
I am just. Oh, actually, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I am just baffled by that. He's sitting there talking about how we're not going to let China, basically not letting China eat our lunch. Well, yeah, because they already ate it. Like, they can't eat our lunch and have it too. That's already been eaten. They can't eat it again, Joe. Unless maybe they can. I don't know what else he's got planned, but Jesus.
Well, that's the same level of delusion as him saying that he's strong on the border, right? It's the same level of delusion.
What the hell was that?
Same level of delusion saying that he's the one fighting fentanyl. It's the same level of delusion saying that he's the one who is saving our economy when it's collapsing. For you to believe any of those things, you'd have to be completely devoid from reality.
And he is.
But I don't think the average person is, though.
I think a lot of your, similar to the balloon, if you just look up, I think a lot of this stuff's pretty self-evident, especially your prices, especially your wages. This make-believe pretend, I'd say the other big thing that was kind of make-believe pretend fantasy world is this, like, fighting for small businesses. Like, we've had an absolute slaughter of small businesses the past 2 years. Amazon, Walmart, big box stores, their profits went absolutely through the roof. We're talking about 25 to 50% increase in cash flow for them during COVID. And where did that cash flow come from? It came from your mom and pop, even medium-sized chains that were forcibly closed. I mean, it's such a great example, but the person that was trying to sell stuff out of her little corner shop, her little boutique, she's trying to sell it on Facebook Marketplace, and the police came and arrested her for having nobody in her store, just doing a video expose where she was in the video talking about her products and then selling them, shipping them to people via Facebook Marketplace. And she was arrested for that during COVID. And we're going to sit here and all of these were Democrat cities that were doing this. It wasn't a Republican city that was shutting down the gyms. It wasn't Republican cities that were closing your schools, not for long term. Just remembering, it's been 3 years, my gosh, just remembering the history of the COVID pandemic. I look back on what you and I did, Dyer, and what we said and when we said it, and I stand by 100% of what we said in the timeline that we said it. We were cautious at the beginning before we knew. When data came out, we followed the data. We looked at the data. We followed the science. Before the data came out, we were cautious, as everybody should have been. You can't look back with what you know now and judge how people were reacting in February by being cautious. Nobody knew.
We know that the way they reacted by condemning the unvaccinated, wanting to keep them locked out of their bank accounts, keep them out of businesses, so they can't go shopping. The inhuman treatment of people who doubted the severity of the disease, doubted the severity of the effectiveness of the vaccine. The inhuman treatment of those people was not supported by the evidence, is not moral by any standards. And so there's the difference between people being cautious and with a lack of information, being careful, but then actually listening to the data as it came out. That's different from someone who
active suppression of the data. I mean, that's what we found out in 2022. With all the leaks from the NHS, all the emails, what we learned at the end of 2022 was they spent all the people who were their job is to stop pandemics from spreading. Every single person that was their job, they spent the first 5 days of the pandemic trying to cover up that this was their fault. This was caused by research they funded, signed off on, and planned. That was their fault. All of this stuff that the government did to us, they kind of knew. It seemed like they kind of knew about it right off the bat. We, the people, didn't find out about it until a few months later. But when we did, we updated our framework, our view, how we were talking about it, what we were doing, based off the new evidence. The Democrats never did that. The party of science. Well, no, it's the party of dogma. It's the party of the very first thing you see is the thing that sticks forever. You can't possibly ever update your assumptions or your knowledge or anything like that. And they kept that going they're still keeping it going. I mean, Biden just did a State of the Union where he talked about we're at the end of COVID, but the end of COVID is 4 months away. It's 120 days away before we get to May, where Joe said that the end of the emergency is at. That's not cautious. That's just, we kind of like having the extra power, and we got some stuff we want to get done, and we think it's going to take about 4 months to do it. So just, fuck you.
Putting someone in jail because they were selling something out of selling products online out of their store was not helping protect anyone from a disease.
Yeah.
And a lot of policies were like that, where having restaurants shut down because they can't be serving people, but then having a movie company set up in the parking lot of that restaurant to sell food to the cast with less safety than the restaurant would have had.
Yeah, you had the absolute slaughter. I mean, I would bet he said something about there's like 10,000 new small businesses or something in the last month or whatever the time frame was. I bet you most of those small businesses were probably people who were forced to close up shop in a blue state and had to move to a red state and reapplied for the license, and then all of a sudden, oh wow, we've got a bunch of new small businesses. I don't care about how many new small businesses there are. How many did you kill? What is the net change?
It's a lot of the California to Texas movements. I bet you a lot of people who left California or other Democrat cities, they had to reapply for a license in that state.
Yeah,
that they would move to.
Yeah, and you got to wonder, is this? I don't know. Does the Democrat? I guess it does fly with the Democrat voter. I don't. I mean, does it fly with small business owners? Do small business owners believe this? I mean, maybe some of them do, but I'm guessing the average one doesn't. I don't know. I think like the balloon stuff's just there's just too much stuff that's blatantly obvious. When the Democrats are doing what they did, and really the deep state and the kleptocrat Republicans and the uniparty people too, when they were doing what they did between 2010 and 2020, pre-COVID, where there was a lot of funny business with the economy going on, and there was a lot of predictions. Hey, the music's going to stop pretty quick here, and there's a lot less chairs than there are people in this room. When they were doing that, it wasn't as easy to feel when interest rates were at 0% for a whole year. A lot of you out there, your entire adult lives were 0% interest rate or sub 0.5% interest rate. You can hide a lot of economic destruction underneath of 0% interest rates. But guess what? Interest rates aren't 0% anymore. And all of that pain that we deferred the last 10 years, it's coming. And that pain was caused by Biden and during the Obama administration and the Democrats in Congress. And followed by trying to make sure that they capped all of that off with COVID for the last 3 years. The absolute evisceration of the middle class. And then they're going to come back and have the audacity to sit there and tell you that they're really the champions of the middle class. They're really the champions of the small business and of preventing fentanyl and of being hard on China and world peace and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
We've covered so many stories over the last 2 years that directly refute everything he said, and we're not surprised. We expected him to lie, right? But his lies are incredibly brazen, and I don't know who is going to believe them anymore.
All right. Well, it's pretty late. I think Dyer and I's analysis abilities are probably waning quicker.
Yeah, I'm pretty exhausted.
Yeah. I'm left speechless by a lot of it, but I would say that the Direwolf media response is this was a script of pure fantasy, and it was to be expected. I think even predicting, I think almost every single thing that we said was predicted.
Yep.
Yeah. Basically everything was predicted. Even though it was predictable, I'm still taken aback by just how the blatant level that he lied about, and just trying to flip the script on a ton of things that are just not true. If you vote Biden, I hope you're getting the brunt of those policies.
Yep. All right. We'll see you guys this next weekend.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Direwolf out.
All right. Travis signing off. Thank you guys so much for being with us tonight, and have a good rest